Hello and welcome back, Eddie Radosevich, George Stoia, Josh McCuistion. This is a little bit of a different style here on the Soonerscoop.com YouTube page. A really good offer for Oklahoma fans that are watching this right now out there on YouTube. $1, 2 months, Soonerscoop.com. Maybe one of the better times to join Soonerscoop.com as the transfer portal is in full swing. That is $1 off, 2 months, the next 2 months. And promo code OU1. It's been an active day for Oklahoma in the transfer portal, or for players from Oklahoma entering the transfer portal. At the moment of this recording, I think that they are now up to, 7? Is that the current number? Dylan Gabriel, Nate Anderson, Savion Byrd, Reggie Grimes, Key Lawrence, Marcus Major, and Dalen Smothers. So 2 running backs. That makes 3 total if you count Tywee Walker, who has already announced his intentions to enter the transfer portal, boys. And, let's start with you, George. This is just kind of a situation where welcome to the world of college football in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of those guys are real big surprises other than Dylan. And Dylan mostly because we thought he was going to go to the NFL, and we've already touched on that quite a bit. But the rest of that group, it makes a lot of sense. Dalen Smothers, maybe he's a little bit of a shock just because he's only been here a year. But you think back to August, I think it was like the second or third day he left training camp and went back home, and there was some homesickness there. So I would assume that's what's maybe going on here. He didn't play a huge role this year. Maybe he's looking to go somewhere else. And you look at what Oklahoma's bringing in and Taylor Tatum, you have to think he's a part of the puzzle. Maybe they go out and they get somebody in the portal at running back as well. But the rest of that group, guys, I'm honestly not surprised by a lot of them. I mean, Marcus Major, he's been here forever. I didn't even know he had another year. So he's gone. The rest of those guys, again, I just don't see a ton of surprises. Maybe somebody will be a total curveball here in the next week or whatever the portal's open. But right now, I don't think any of them are huge surprises or really big losses, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's what was going to be my question to Josh, just in terms of, and not to belittle anybody, but I think that there is a little bit of honesty here. There's a little bit of truth here. Everybody outside of, in terms of 2024, and you're moving on into, what will be Brent Venables' third season, the first season in the SEC. I don't know if there's a name on here, maybe outside of Dalen Smothers, that I would have sat here and said, yeah, that guy should be a contributor. I think
maybe Savion Byrd.
Maybe Savion Byrd, but that is a lot of expectation. And I think that there was a lot of people that thought he was going to really kind of win that starting role if we go all the way back into August and September of this year. It just never came to fruition, Josh. Is it almost easier to say, I don't want to use the P word, like not that word, you guys, processing. It seems like there is a little bit of that going on, and not to say that that's what's happening with specific situations with Smothers or with Savion Byrd, but it does seem like there are some conversations that are being had inside the Switzer Center as far as the future for some of these guys with the Oklahoma football program.
Yeah, and I would expect there to be some more, Eddie. I mean, we've had conversations. None of these names are overly surprising, as you guys have already said. The one that I think it's obvious to everyone that I would guess Oklahoma would like to have back is Smothers. I mean, I think he at times flashed some real ability and looked like he could maybe be a difference maker down the road. Savion Byrd, I think it's just more disappointing than anything that the guy that we all saw. I mean, guys, we can all go back to that Florida State game where he had some really dominant moments, and you kind of thought, okay, this guy's ready to be not just an Oklahoma starting guard, but maybe a really good one. And it didn't happen. I mean, even this year, he had moments that looked really good, and then he would just have these catastrophic mistakes that were hard to explain. So I think those are the two that you kind of say, yeah, I would almost say, like, you feel like the staff should have gotten more out of those two. And I'm not blaming, like, they can leave whenever they feel like it and the staff can't control that. I certainly understand it. But coming in, there are guys that you said, okay, these guys have a chance to be difference makers. And even at times, even in Smothers' very short career, he showed the ability to be that guy. But again, I think expecting a lot out of anybody really other than Smothers at this point in their career. Oklahoma's creating numbers, and like I said, I don't think it's done. I think these are guys that have had a chance to actually file their paperwork. I don't think we have a Ron Tatum situation where he has just declared himself in the portal. We'll see where it goes. But yeah, I'm guessing you're going to see 2 or 3 more guys like this where it's just they want to play football and they probably weren't going to have that opportunity in any real form at Oklahoma.
I think the instant reaction is going to be people see 3 running backs into the portal and people will be like, well, what are they going to do? Panic button, all that stuff. But do you guys think they'll go after anyone in the portal at running back? And this also indicates to me that I think Javonte Barnes is coming back despite all that's happened this year. I would expect him to be back now, considering how small that room is when you talk about Gavin Sawchuk and Javonte Barnes, then Caleb Hicks, and then I guess Emeka Megwa. Is that how you say his name?
Sure.
Megwa?
He got a carry. He got
1 carry. I mean, I don't expect him to be a contributor, but that's who you're talking about. Those are the 4
physically
guys.
Great.
But then you also bring in obviously Taylor Tatum, Xavier Robinson from Carl Albert. But do you guys think they'll go after anyone in the portal at running back? Maybe an experienced guy?
I would think you almost have to, guys, because, again, the thing that people forget, they could say, oh, well, Josh, there's 5 scholarship backs. Cool. That's great. And you saw that situation this year as well. And then Oklahoma was at several points of the year, they were basically down to 1 and a hobbled number 2. I mean,
sure.
that can happen that fast, that position. And secondarily, guys, people forget practice. You've got to have bodies just to run practice. And if somebody gets dinged up during, okay, we're going to hold this guy out of practice and hope he's ready for the game, that's great. But you still have to be able to run the practice to get to the game, to have your defense ready, to have your quarterbacks ready, all the other people that surround that position. So there is I would be very surprised if there isn't another back. I guess if you assume Barnes returns, it's possible that they don't go to the portal. But if Barnes goes, and I know, we've obviously got our Donnie Hazelwoods, our Stoops bros that are tracking the follows and that kind of stuff. Javonte Barnes has clearly followed some other coaching staff. There's no question that has happened. So if that's the case, then it kind of makes you wonder, I guess if he leaves, then absolutely you have to go to the portal. There's no way about that. But the good news is kind of very differently from when we get an offensive line, defensive line conversation, you can find good backs in the portal. That is there to be had. Guys, look at Kenneth Walker that went to Michigan State just a few years ago.
No doubt about it. Let's talk defensive line. You put something up on the Crimson Corner on Monday morning, just in terms of, and we should mention that coaches are out recruiting right now. That is one of the things that happens at this time of the year. Even if you were playing in the Big 12 Championship, all those coaches are now out recruiting, doing their thing before bowl prep really gets started or bowl practice gets started. Todd Bates had an interesting visit today down in your territory, down in the Houston area.
Yeah, Todd Bates, who went by Katie Paytow, who is not in Todd Bates' general recruiting area, and nor do they have a defensive lineman to really for him to identify, at least unless someone has emerged that I am unaware of at this point in time. What they do have is the father of Texas A&M defensive lineman David Hicks is the head coach now at Katy Paytow. Now, to be fair, they also do have Dejon Petaway, who is the cousin of Jaquez Petaway, that is a 2025 cornerback offer for Oklahoma. So it's one of those things where, and I want to be really clear, because David Hicks has not entered the portal, it's been rumored, but hasn't happened. There's not a lot they can discuss without crossing the NCAA boundaries of tampering and all those things. And we know that all coaches at all times stay away from any sort of tampering and any sort of rules violations. So let's just know that. Let's assume that and go forward. But on the first day of the week to make a stop by Katy Paytow, whether you're saying something or you're not saying something, you're saying it. Like you're being present. You are making sure that family knows that if David wants to look around, which guys, with for those that don't follow this stuff closely, Elijah Robinson, Texas A&M's defensive line coach,
right,
has that been announced officially, or is that still just as reported by Billy Lucci?
I don't think that it's been announced officially, but
okay.
it's a formality. It's only we're waiting on an official announcement. Elijah Robinson has gone to Syracuse to join Fran Brown, I believe, to take over the Syracuse program. He's going to be the defensive coordinator, I thought.
Yes, that's my understanding, and my understanding was that he wanted to be A&M's defensive coordinator and was kind of trying to jockey those two positions. And from what I gathered, A&M was willing to make him the most expensive position coach in the country, but was not willing to make him defensive coordinator of Mike Elko. So for A&M to lose him, I was told several weeks ago that was going to be the domino that had to fall. But that had to happen if Oklahoma was really going to make a run at David Hicks. Now that he's out, A&M knows their situation, guys. And we saw Walter Nolan go in the portal. Like, they know how much talent they have on the defensive line, how responsible for it being there Elijah Robinson was. And David Hicks is one of those prize pieces. So if he'll enter the portal, there are people out there that would tell you Oklahoma's in very good shape here. Now, I don't know that that's true. And I don't know, it doesn't necessarily add up because he still hasn't gone into the portal. We've seen, like I said, Walter Nolan, one of A&M's real stars on that defense, he's already done it. He's filed the paperwork and done what he needed to do. So I don't know if there's some hesitancy for a reason. I can't explain that part yet. But I do know that if he does enter the portal, Oklahoma will seize upon that opportunity with every amount of ability they have.
Josh, David Hicks is obviously the name that we all come up with, which it feels like we're coming full circle here with that whole.
You just got to go to the Katy Patel High School and sit in the parking lot, and that would really, I think, bring everything full circle back from his announcement day.
Yeah.
I'm just going to sit in it's almost like a lunchroom auditorium kind of thing, and I'll just sit in there and wait for David to come back in and make a new announcement. I'm just going to hang out in there.
That would be fantastic content. But Josh, is there anybody else from A&M that OU might be interested in with all the departures there?
Yeah, I mean, and I know people, I mentioned Walter Nolan. Obviously, if OU could get Walter Nolan to come, they're going to throw the kitchen sink at him. Like, I've obviously there's a lot of Tennessee talk, him going back home. He's from Tennessee. I've heard some others. I think he may move back a little closer to home because my understanding is I think his family's down there with him in College Station. So it's amazing how many jobs popped up for several people around the A&M program over the last 5 years. Everybody could just find work in College Station. So that's always interesting to follow. But
that's why I think that's why Jimbo Fisher was always compared to Ron DeSantis for job creation.
A lot of job creation. Yes. There's some just shocking parallels, but let's not go there. The Damian Sanford kid that was also a Katy Patel player, Oklahoma offered him like last November.
Yeah.
And there was some thought that was going to be enough to push, especially when at the end of last year, when it looked like maybe Jimbo was going to get fired, maybe he wasn't. And that might be the thing that kind of finally pushed David over to Oklahoma and take Sanford as well. From a recruiting perspective, Oklahoma didn't really sign a pure linebacker. They have James Nesta. Some people kind of see him as an edge. So Sanford, being a young guy, just went through, I don't even know if he played enough to I think he may have just redshirted last year for A&M, but I need to look at those numbers. I'm not certain about that. He is a guy that I would very much expect Oklahoma to have a spot for if he wanted to come along. So we'll have to see if that's something they choose to pursue. And again, just like David Hicks, he's going to have to go into the portal.
Sure.
But it could be a big possible, land for Oklahoma at Katy Patel. And then again, that only helps with the guy that we've only peripherally talked about, but was, I don't want to say literally the reason that Todd Bates was there, but is ostensibly the reason he was there, and that's Dejon Petaway, the 2025 corner offer that I know OU likes a lot.
Josh, wait, sorry, Eddie.
No, go ahead.
This isn't a portal guy because he's still just a commit, but what about Dominick McKinley?
That is an interesting one. I know our guys at our Texas site, Jerry Hamilton and that crew, they've referenced that Texas isn't all that certain of what his interest level is going to be. Because, guys, what a lot of the talk was, and I think I've mentioned this on one of the recruiting reports, was there was a lot of buzz that Elijah Robinson might take the D-line coach position at LSU. And then Dominick McKinley would just follow him to LSU and everything kind of happens naturally. But now that he's going to go to Syracuse, everything's kind of up in the air. He never really seemed to hit it off with LSU for whatever reason. I'm not sure if his family, my impression was that his family didn't always love the approach of Brian Kelly. I mean, we'll let Eddie talk about, Brian Kelly and his recruiting pitch and all the strengths of his game. But with Texas, I mean, when he chose A&M, it felt like OU was the runner-up. So if he's really going to look around and take a sincere look, it wouldn't shock me at all, guys, if we hear, Dominick McKinley is going to be in Norman next weekend or the weekend after on these last few visit weekends to see if maybe they can make something happen there. We'll have to watch it, of course, but I think it's fairly interesting, and I think more than I have in a while. I think there is some possibility that something could get going there.
One more A&M name for you. Evan Stewart, is that a name that I'm sure that people remember, former 5-star wide receiver? Maybe. Is that something that, I mean, obviously Oklahoma seems like they feel like they're pretty confident about what they have coming back at wide receiver in 2024, but certainly if that was a name that entered the portal, you at least got to give a call, right?
Oh, yeah. Evan Stewart has a chance to be a first-round draft pick.
Yeah.
Like, he is that kind of talented. His speed is unbelievable. And I want to say, because I'm going to be transparent, I worried that Evan Stewart, how he would translate to the college game, because he was so explosive, so fast. I thought he was a little soft. I thought he might get pushed around a little bit in the college game. I thought he might struggle a little bit, but he makes tough catches. You see him do it. So I was just wrong on Evan Stewart. And to me, if he's in the portal, guys, there's a kind of a popular Oklahoma recruiting legend that I've frankly never heard a lot that I put stock into it. But there are people that will tell you Evan Stewart wanted to commit to Oklahoma very early in his recruitment. And because Oklahoma had landed, it was the Makai Lemon. It was that class, that 2021 class where they were rolling before Riley left, or excuse me, I guess the 22 class, where they were, Makai Lemon.
Was it Keon Brown?
The Branch kid. Yeah. So there were several guys there, and they kind of said, hey, we want you to wait a little bit. And obviously that pissed him off. And so he kind of went a different direction, but it's a different staff. Emmett Jones, we know, has incredible connections in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So if he entered the portal, there's plenty of reason to think that Oklahoma could at least, have his ear for a little bit and kind of see what happens. Now, from everything I've gathered, Oklahoma's going to need to bring the bag. Like, I mean, that I think that is something he is absolutely mindful of. And again, this isn't me accusing a kid of anything. That's fine. Like, that's part of the deal. So I think that has to be part of the thinking. But again, if Oklahoma wants to play that game, I think they could absolutely make a run at Evan Stewart.
It's an important position. Let's jump back to defensive line, because there's a name that I think Oklahoma fans are probably familiar with. Certainly OK Prep's high school fans. Chris McClellan, the former Owasso Ram, headed down to Gainesville. He has announced that he is transferring. He was one of the early portal entrants. I guess Sunday evening, Monday morning, that time frame. It might have even happened prior to that, but Oklahoma, that certainly seems like that would be a player that Todd Bates would want to give a call to and just kind of test the waters and see how that recruitment has gone.
Yeah, and I thought it was really interesting when that picture emerged over the weekend of him at the Big 12 championship game watching Oklahoma State and Texas. You kind of wondered, like, okay, what's, that it just wondered kind of what that meant, if that signified anything. Now, obviously Florida's not playing in a bowl game or anything like that, so it wasn't like he had bowl prep to worry about, but he would presumably have classes. So I think Oklahoma is in a very interesting spot here. When it first came out that he was going to transfer, I kind of said, I don't know, because even through two different staffs, the recruitment of Chris McClellan was so off and on. And I mean that both from his side, from Oklahoma's side. It was very hard to know where anyone stood. And I think he has surprised some people with how good he's been. I think he's bought in more than people maybe thought he would. Chris is one of those really talented guys that you kind of wondered, how serious is he about football? Like, how much does he want to be as good as his talent says he can be? So I think, wow. So just a little side note here. I actually turned on my music, so I got to hear that through my headphones. So apologies, everybody, for my pause there. But no, there's no question. I think Oklahoma and Chris McClellan could work out this time. And talking to some people close to him and around him, I think this could all happen pretty fast. Whatever's going to happen, whether it's Oklahoma or somewhere else, I don't think Chris McClellan wants to goof around. I think he has a pretty clear idea of what he's thinking. And you might see him visit a school or two, something like that. But I don't think this is going to be a last-minute deal, kind of like it was for his high school signing.
Is defensive line the number one spot OU needs to go after in the portal? Do you guys think? I mean, I think tight end is up there, and we can get into some tight end. But
and it's not just because of Savion Byrd, and it's not because of Nate Anderson, who I don't know if that necessarily fit into the plans moving forward. But it seems like offensive line's a group that, just in terms of feeling better about your numbers, even though you love what Caden Green did as a true freshman, you love what Jacob Sexton's doing as a redshirt freshman. I don't know. It just seems like you want to get more numbers there.
And I think too, and we bring this up ad nauseum, but going into the SEC, you got to win in the trenches. And I think if you can go out and get some guys that are the caliber of a David Hicks or Chris McClellan, you got to do it on defense. And I'm sure some of it's too, you lose so much production up front on defense when you talk about some of the seniors that are leaving, in Jordan Kelly, Isaiah Coe, Rondell Bothroyd, those type of guys. You don't know if DJ Terry's going to come back, Jacob Lacey. So I think defensive line, offensive line, like you said, I think that they really need to find some depth there. But Josh, I want to ask you about tight end. What are you hearing about OU in the tight end market in terms of guys in the portal?
Well, the primary name that I think everybody's heard so far is Jaylen Conor, the Arizona State transfer that was at Oklahoma his freshman year. Was a guy that was a Riley recruit, and for whatever reason, it just didn't really work out at Oklahoma. It kind of depends on who you talk to as to what led to his departure. But from what I've been able to gather, Oklahoma is very sincere in their interest. There is a report out that he will be at that Joe John Finley and Brent Venables are going to go see him here in the next day or two. So I think there is very real interest from Oklahoma. I have been told by some people around the situation that there is a lot of belief that he will come check out Oklahoma for a visit. Now, I don't know if it's to visit his old dorm room. I don't know what if you've played there already, I don't know what you could need to see. I feel like it would just be having the conversation with the coaches and what the plan is. But beyond that, I mean, if Venables and Finley can sell him on Oklahoma, then, he chose Oklahoma once upon a time for something he liked. So you'd have to think there's a reason to believe that they can find some ground with him. And guys, I mean, it's an area where Seth Luttrell and his background with tight ends and that kind of thing, you'd have to think that is a possible chip in Oklahoma's favor.
He also has a good amount of experience. I think that he would be pretty helpful. I know this last year he had 30 receptions, 362 yards receiving, no touchdowns. But the year before, 38 receptions, 422 yards, and 5 touchdowns. And some of that is, the quarterback situation at Arizona State was not ideal this year, I would say.
74 receptions, 846 yards, 11.4 per, and 6 touchdowns since arriving over the last 3 years, as you said, in Tempe, George.
I mean, the last time Oklahoma had a tight end putting up those kind of numbers, the dude was from Arizona. His name was Mark Andrews. Like, I mean, that just is what it is. I mean, that's a really impressive 2-year total. And, you're right that the quarterback situation in Arizona State was bad this year. The whole situation was bad in Arizona State this year. That offense, and I think Kenny Dillingham's a rising star. I think he'll get Arizona State rolling before too terribly long. But guys, not only was their roster depleted, they went through, I think they had more new players than Colorado did for all the buzz that Colorado had. Or I think maybe it was like 65 to 71. It was something like that. It was very close. But then Arizona State just got decimated by injuries. I mean, I think at one point I had read something where they had 5 healthy offensive linemen over the last 2 weeks of football. Like they were just having to kind of wing it at practice to just kind of go through their final few weeks of games.
They're going to have a lot of options too, I think, at tight end. It feels like there's a lot of tight ends that have entered the portal. I think the kid from Baylor,
very interesting.
He's one that I would keep an eye on. I think there was maybe one from Notre Dame. I can't remember. There
was a kid from Florida. Is it
Florida.
Odum? Is that his last name?
Yeah.
So that's a name I've heard a little bit. I won't say I know a lot about that situation. Jonathan Odum, that's his name. Yeah. So a grad transfer guy. So, been around a little bit. And, a big sturdy guy. Because, guys, I think if you can get a Jaylen Conor that really can be a difference maker as a receiver, great. Sure, you go that way. But if you can get that guy that's the big tight end that can play, can help you in the run game, and then you let Devon Mitchell kind of grow into a role as your second tight end and you do some 12 personnel and that kind of stuff, then that makes all the sense in the world. Like, you can make that work. I think that was the problem this year. They never had the counterpunch. They had Austin Stogner, who's an experienced guy, can play some decent enough football for you. Although, we can debate how often that happened this year. But you didn't have that young tight end. And I think that's somewhat to do with Cade McIntyre getting hurt, because I liked the flashes I saw of Cade McIntyre. But they didn't have that young guy that you knew, okay, just give him his time. Let him develop. With Devon Mitchell, you have that guy. You have that guy that you know is the future of your position, and you just kind of have to get through it until that guy's ready to go.
And right or wrong, I think that, you talk to people around the program, I think they still feel like Caden Helms can be somebody at some point. He just has to stay healthy. He has to give himself a little bit of opportunity, just to be available to practice even, let alone play in football games. Outside of some of the knowns that we've talked about, Josh, is there anybody, whether it be, the Thor kid, Thor Griffith up at Harvard, Spencer Brown's name has been tossed out there, the offensive tackle from Michigan State, that might somewhat kind of be a Walter Rouse of 2024, if you will, through this transfer portal, process, or whatever you want to call it. Any names out there that people haven't talked about, or that we haven't talked about, George, and feel free.
What about the receiver from Purdue, whose name is blanking? I'm blanking on his name.
Burks, right?
Burks.
Deion Burks?
Yes.
Yeah. I think Deion's what I had in my head, so I think that's right, Eddie. Yeah, he's an interesting guy. The Boise State receiver who I'm going to join George with, is it Mitchell? I know
who you're talking
blanking
about.
on his name too.
Well, if he comes here, we'll learn his name and a win a Bolitnikoff.
Yeah. Exactly. You could earn that we're all going to play Eddie's role in this particular show. You're just going to earn us learning your name. But no, he's an interesting kid. The guys, if I'm not mistaken, and I think we have to mention him, and Eddie already did, but just at some depth, Spencer Brown, if I'm not mistaken, is OU's first offer in the portal. That's the only one that we know has happened so far, right? The Alan True, I think is how you say his last name, from 24/7 reported that about an hour ago, I think. And a very reputable guy in that area. I have no reason to doubt that report. And he was a guy that I had gotten the impression as soon as the word got out that he was in the portal that Oklahoma was going to be very, very interested in him. So that adds up to me. It's not something out of left field. And like you said, Eddie, I think because, guys, you were talking about the numbers earlier, and I was kind of doing it while you all were having the offensive line conversation. Guys, if you assume Aaron Parks leaves, which I think we all do, Oklahoma is going to have 9 returning offensive linemen for next year. Now, they bring in 4 freshmen and maybe 5 with Eddie Pierre-Louis, but that only gets you to 14. Guys, we know that Bill Bedenbaugh wants to work at 17, 18. I mean, he wants a lot of scholarship bodies because you're just going to lose some guys. Guys are going to get beat up, and we know Bill likes to play with the rotations a little bit. So, guys, I think you're talking 3 or 4 portal guys. And if you're going to go that heavy, you need at least 2 of those guys to probably be starters, probably one at tackle opposite of Jacob Sexton, who I think we're going to see move back to left tackle, his more natural position. And then you've got to figure out what happens on the right side. So, and you want to create some competition, especially now that Savion Byrd is gone inside. I think Caden Green, guys, I know the plan was for him to play right tackle, but I don't know how you move that kid from left guard based on what we saw this year. That looks like a future elite level draft pick, All-American kind of guy there. So I think offensive line, they're going to have to see some action. And Spencer Brown, like you said, I mean, it's kind of like Walter Rouse, guys, where what's not to like if you're Spencer Brown? Come in there, work with Bill Bedenbaugh, see the year Walter Rouse had, probably bumped his draft stock a little bit, got to play in a lot of big games. And, you know, I can't imagine there's too many schools that can match Oklahoma's NFL production that are going to be pursuing him. I mean, there's not that many that need more bodies up front like that.
Another name to keep an eye on, I think, on the offensive line, who I think is going to be one of the more coveted guys, is J.C. Davis from New Mexico. I think that he's been somebody that a lot of people have talked about. I have no idea what the interest is in terms of him in Oklahoma, but I do think he's somebody that a lot of people will be after. I think he's a tackle, 6'5", 307. I'm not sure where. I think he played tackle at New Mexico, but maybe he's someone to watch too.
There's a lot of those names. Just in terms – go ahead, Josh.
Oh, no, I just wanted to say, like, for those that – you know, and people will say, oh, he's from New Mexico. Like, don't forget, guys, Johnny Cornelius came from Rhode Island and started at Oregon all season this year. Like, a lot of these – it's why you're seeing, like, you look forward in the draft where you don't see the guys that are you don't see as many small school guys. You're seeing less and less of that guys going to the Senior Bowl from Albany, like Jared Verse would have. You're seeing those guys move into the Power 5 ranks. So I know people will see some of these school names and think, oh, a guy can't play. That's not the way it is. You just these coaches get a chance to evaluate these guys after they've developed for a couple years, and then you find some gems like that. So, I mean, J.C. Davis is a guy that makes sense. And, again, some of it is just numbers. Oklahoma, even if they don't think, oh, that guy's a starter, they can help them be better through the course of a, 3-4 month season.
No doubt about it. Just in terms of a guy that I think a lot of people around these parts are probably familiar with, what's your initial read on Jocelyn Malaska, the cornerback from via Bethany High School, has a younger brother that is going to be highly recruited in 2025, I believe. Just in terms of him entering the transfer portal, he was out at Utah under Todd Whittingham. Just what is your initial read on that?
First of all, I was really surprised he entered the portal. Like, I know he had an injury this year and he missed a lot of time. But, coming out of his freshman year at Utah, there was some talk that he might compete for a starting job this year. And then, like I said, he got hurt and he just missed a lot of the spring, and it really slowed down his momentum and his progress. And I think he just kind of wanted to come home, be closer to his family. You mentioned his brother Evenson, that's a 2026 corner at Bethany High. And there's no question from the people I've talked to that if Oklahoma were to find a spot for him, they would be very hard to beat. I think that would absolutely be – that's kind of the hope, I think, of that family. I think that's what they would like to see happen. Sure. Now, I think Oklahoma State is a very interesting possibility. I've heard some talk of SMU, and I know people scoff at that. SMU is now an ACC team, guys. I mean, that's good competition. He can play good football. But even if they go 13-0, they may not make the playoffs. But, that's another conversation for another day. I like where Oklahoma is now. Talking to some sources, I think it's going to be a little bit numbers dependent. We're going to have to see what happens to some other positions. I can definitely say Oklahoma has interest. I think that is very, very clear. It's just a matter of, can they make him work in the 85? And that'll be the real question. And if they do, then obviously Oklahoma's chances with Evenson, like I said, one of their, I believe, now that I say this, I think their first offer in the 2026 class in the state of Oklahoma, it would be pretty hard to imagine anything else being the result for him, other than to follow his older brother to Oklahoma. So, again, kind of a twofold win there. But I like where Oklahoma is there if they choose to go forward.
It feels like OU and probably other schools too are somewhat waiting to see who all enters the portal. I mean, you talk about how many guys have entered just today from Oklahoma. I'm sure this coaching staff is thinking, hey, let's wait and see who else gets in the portal, who else we might have a chance at. I would assume that, again, they've only offered one guy. I would assume that there's somewhat of a waiting game going on.
Kind of tells you that they know about something else, doesn't it? Like, that feels that way to me when you only see one offer going out and we know they've got needs they need to fill in the portal. But what I will say, guys, is I don't think – like, I think Oklahoma's getting this roster to where they want it to be, because I don't think you're going to see 12 guys, 14 guys, 50 – like we've seen the first couple of years under Brent Venables, because we know that's not what Brent wants to do. That's not how he wants to build this team. He wants it to be like Kirby Smart, where you're going out and getting 3 or 4 pieces, and I don't think they're there yet. I think it's going to be more like 7, 8, 9 guys, but I don't think it's going to be as overwhelming as the first 2 classes where they knew they just had to turn over and find as many bodies as they can. But honestly, guys, I mean, if you told me they signed 8 guys and like 5 or 6 of them were offensive linemen, defensive linemen, and then they got maybe a tight end and a running back or a corner or something like that, I think they'd be pretty content with that. I don't think there's a lot of other massive needs on this roster other than the line of scrimmage.
You think they go, and I don't know what the in terms of what is out there, kicker? Is that a position? I mean, it's obviously a position that has to be better. I think Oklahoma finished 129th in special teams this year, which is completely flat out unacceptable.
Guys, do you struggle? I struggle with my evaluation of the special teams. Punting was a problem for a huge portion of the year, and then they were like, oh, here's Elzinga. And then it was fine. Like, I had no further problems with the tight end room, or excuse me, the punting room. Kicking game, about the time the punting situation got figured out, the kicking game fell off a cliff. And the return game was soft all year. But, like, I thought coverage was really good all year. The punt coverage, kickoff coverage, I thought those teams were pretty good. That they had the massive mistake against Oklahoma State that was crippling. Or was that Kansas? Who am I? It was Kansas. When they were trying to pin Kansas deep. And that's a huge mistake. But, you know, in general, I thought the units were good. I thought individual players really struggled. But, yeah, I mean, Eddie, kicker, if you could find the right guy – I've referenced Cam Little multiple times this year. And when I saw that note from him, I thought, oh, here we go. But obviously he's going to the NFL draft and is going to go make a whole lot of money because he is an outstanding kicker. And, for the record, in some of my private conversations, OU never really expressed interest in him. They were good. They didn't need Cam Little. And that, again, prior to Brent Venables.
Sure. And we should also note that they do have Liam Evans coming in, who is, I believe, the number 1 kicker according to Coles, and he's just from up the road in Moore, Oklahoma. I just don't know if it's a very comfortable situation throwing out a true freshman kicker if you need to win a game in Baton Rouge or Oxford, or even here at home in Norman against Tennessee or Alabama. I mean, the list goes on and on. You start looking at the 2024 schedule, and all of a sudden, all those teams that you saw out there on the on Twitter on Sunday that finished in the top 25 of the college football playoff rankings, which is to be debated. I mean, who knows what those idiots are up to? It's going to be a tough schedule. They have to find somebody that can put the ball through the uprights.
I think that, and that's like you said, they have the kid coming in for more next year. You probably feel really good about him. Gavin Marshall's apparently been hurt all season. And so
I've been told that he's going to try to seek a medical red shirt this year, which, you know, I think that there's some people down there that feel like he is really good when he's not injured.
But you got to get somebody that has experience, I think. So
sure.
I do think they'll probably end up taking somebody that has at least kicked in a college football game before.
No doubt about it. It's going to be interesting, guys. This is today has been rather active as we hit up at the top. A couple of different YouTube shows, will be found right here on Soonerscoop.com's YouTube page. George and I did a instant reaction with the Dylan Gabriel news that is already posted. You can find it right here on this page. Josh joined us for a recruiting report, just in terms of breaking down everything that was at Chad Richardson Stadium in Edmond for the higher classifications, mostly all of them, 6A, 6A2, 4A, 5A, 3A state championships, and then coming up this week, and we'll have 2A as well with Washington and Millwood. We hit on that in the recruiting report. So there's plenty of news out there, and it's going to be even more interesting if a David Hicks enters the transfer portal. I'm sure there's going to be some more Oklahoma names, as you insinuated, Josh, that will decide they need to test the free agency waters here in college football. It's a never-ending process, it seems like, and especially this time of the year.
Absolutely. And I do want to say, because again, we know I'm the one that will sell my soul. Like, subscribe, get in all these, because the more you can do that, the more of this stuff we can do. And again, I just want to feel loved and appreciated. I don't know about you guys, but I need that in my life.
No doubt about it. And once again, the $1 offer for 2 months of Soonerscoop.com. And by the way, I know this is all football around here. OU basketball with some big games coming up this week. Providence on Tuesday night, and then up at the BOK Center in Tulsa against Arkansas this weekend. And all of a sudden, you look at a Porter Moser team that's now 7-0 on the year, and they just broke into the top 20 of not just the AP poll, but the first net rating. I believe they were ranked number 9. So big weeks ahead, and plenty of coverage alongside with Bob Przybylo right here on Soonerscoop.com, as well as right here on the Soonerscoop.com YouTube page. So, Josh, we appreciate it. It's going to be interesting to track here as we move along with the transfer portal, and today just being day 1, which is kind of hard to believe. So, until next time, for Josh, for George, I'm Eddie. We'll see you right back here on Soonerscoop.com's YouTube page.